So, my question for you today is, what if being a woman is your spiritual path? What if the fact that you incarnated as a woman in a female body, with all the subtleties and all the physicalities that describes, was not at all an accident and actually has glories, powers, sensitivities, and gifts that are innate to the nation and the reality of womankind. I'm about to start this next cycle of her mystery school, and it's very much about this underlying question, which is, what would happen? Is it possible to walk your walk as a woman in a way that consistently touches your soul, your spirit, your heart, and then brings all that into embodiment here, in you, in your body, in your moments? One of the places I teach from in this school very deeply is this understanding that woman, in reality, what it really is to be a woman and to have deep feminine current alive inside of us, that is actually a gift that we bring to everything else. So many of us, for all sorts of reasons, are in this place of looking a lot of places outside of ourselves to understand, what is it to be a woman? What am I feeling? What's going on here? What's holy? What's not? What's right? What's wrong? And what I've experienced time and time again, and that's why I gathered everything together that I had and put it into the school, is that woman, when you touch into the deep feminine current, when you move beyond your conditioning, beyond all your ideas of what woman is, and let that emerge from inside of you. I know you've touched it. Maybe you've ridden that current for periods of time in your life where you know this is you. You know that you feel it. It's living. It's the most home, the most you that you've ever felt, the most right. That's the deep feminine current. She will articulate and move in our lives in an infinitude of ways. She can be anything, but you know when you're on it. You know when you're on her. You know when that's what's moving through you. Your deep feminine current. It's a feeling. So it might express as ferocity, it might express as desire, it might express as grief, it might express as power, it expresses as literally infinite expressions. But there is a way that you always know when you're touching her, when you're touching you. And so one of the things I teach, and one of the foundations I come back again and again to, is that woman is what we bring. It's what we bring to our culture. It's what we bring to our religions. It's what we bring to everything that we care about. And the fullness of woman is what makes those things even more true. It's what helps them return themselves to integrity. It's what ensouls what we touch, where we choose to lend our power, where we choose to lend our attention and our loving, right? One of the things they say about the deep feminine is that the feminine ensouls, meaning she is the current, the presence, the gateway through which soul is made real, is given a place inside of life, right? So to be true to the deep feminine current, since that's what's on my mind right now, as I'm getting ready to launch into this next 9-month commitment to a group of women, and we're going to walk it together, I was thinking about some of the foundations of the school, some of the foundational teachings and approaches, and I was going to share them with you. I am going to share them with you. Because there are some, for me, the deep feminine is an approach, right? It is almost like she exists, but she's also a way of approaching everything that exists that allows them things to become more true, that allows us to be more present with them, that brings the soul into residency, into embodiment, right? We're talking about woman incarnate, being a woman incarnate here as all we were created to be. And so I was going through and kind of touching into some of the distinctions for me about what is a deep feminine approach then? What is that? I wrote them down. The first thing I would say is that a deep feminine approach to life is always a dance and it's not a conquest. So it is a call and response. It's a movement. It's an emerging, right? It comes from, when I talk about the deep feminine current and when we move into the school looking at what dwells within, there is this movement of what dwells within and what rises up. We sit down into that power. We come into residency and there it is, right? We move with it because it is us. So a deep feminine approach is never a conquest. It never comes out and over. That's just not the movement, right? So she may be powerful, she may be fierce, she may be making her voice known, she might be extremely delicate and inward, but she's never a conquest, right? The approach is a dance. The approach is an asking, a deep listening. Will you reveal yourself to me? How can I reveal myself to myself? How can I invite life to reveal its true essence to me? How can I elicit from life the soul of things? So that's part of the deep feminine approach. I would say from a deep feminine place, our power comes from influence and not control. And this is huge for a lot of women because we care for things. We are mothers. We are architects, social, emotional, physical architects, right? We shape things and we see a lot. we understand a lot of harmonies. We've got a lot of, we're given a lot because we're asked, for one thing, just to be mothers, if nothing else. But where we often where our fears and our own rigidities can start to shape our life rather than our power is when we start to control rather than influence. So one of the things that we work with a lot in the school is coming into a place where in magnetism, in residency, in voice, we are of great influence in our lives, in our world, in the worlds of those that we love, but not in control. The deep feminine acknowledges that there is ultimately not control. We are not in control. Surrender is very much a part of deep feminine approach. And that's on the deepest level. I mean, obviously you're in control of some things, but that's on the deepest level of knowing that, and all of us know it probably by now, things are going to happen. Life happens, right? We are taken into the descent. We are all of a sudden graced with a miracle. By now we should all know that it's not all up to us. So a deep feminine state of residency and presence is one of great influence, often indirectly, not always at all, but not control. It's a presence that brings everything to a higher order, that invites the untamed from all things, the true. And in that, influences towards the good rather than controls for the sake of the good. Right? So influence, not control. It's both a way of respecting and being in deeper intimacy and deeper trust with people in our lives, and a way of staying nourished and grounded and with ourselves in the face of all the things that we can't control. It gives us a nourishing sense of influence of being able to flow out and change and shift things from deep within, right? From a true place. So influence, not control. I would say another, for me, defining aspect of deep feminine presence is that in the deep feminine way, we are looking toward, we are being asked to surrender, but not to submit. And there was a very nuanced difference there. So surrender, to give way to all that lives in us, to give way to the truth, to give way to grief, to give way. Surrender is so much where we can come to find who we really are, because we've surrendered all that we thought. We've put it on the altar. We've put it at the feet of life, right? It's how we surrender to greater pleasure. It's how we surrender to our pain and the great makings, the soul makings of our life. We have to surrender. And often we are forced into the place to surrender, and it's not from cruelty. It's to teach us deep feminine way, right? And the soul of things. But that is not the same as submitting. When you surrender, somewhere in there, even if all choice seems to have been taken away, right? You're in an annihilating time. There's death, there's whatever, you're being annihilated. Somewhere inside is this realization that even if it's not an initiation you ever would have chosen, ever, you can choose. There's a place of choice somewhere deep inside of it, even if it's just, okay, I will choose to face this. I'll choose to be with this. I will choose to find a way to love myself. In submission, we say, when you submit, you give it all away, right? Surrender is a way of letting life have all of its ways with you and staying with yourself and not giving in to the sometimes very convincing illusion that life is cruel, it's brutal, and it's unfair, and it's all these things. But to surrender rather than to submit is to say, I'll surrender back into myself again and again. I'll surrender to the truth that is here. I will surrender because there's nothing left to do, but I'm not going to submit. You're not going to have me. I still have me. Whatever you are, you're not going to have me. I have me. I'm not submitting, but I will surrender to what this is, whatever it is, because it's what is. It's the truth. So surrender, not submission. The other thing I noted was that for me, the deep feminine is an untamed presence, but not an abandoned presence. So when we open to the deep feminine, we open to what is authentically woman inside of us. It's untamed. It's an arising. It's a natural force. These are natural laws incarnate. That's what woman is, right? She's a natural law incarnate. She's a force of nature incarnate, right? But in that, for many of us, there's a distinction to be made between being in the wildness and the untamed nature of ourselves, but not being abandoned, not moving into a portrait of reckless, kind of not give a fuckness, right? That's just not give a fuckness. That's just recklessness. What's wild is extremely alert. It's untamed and it's deeply responsive, right? And it's still. Wild things are very present inside of themselves. They are giving way and giving voice to the truth of themselves because they're wild and untamed. They have no choice, right? But it can look a million ways, and it is not an abandonment of elegance, if that's what it is, or awareness, or care for yourself, or responsiveness to others, right? It's untamed. It's a natural force. So untamed, but not abandoned. impeccable, but not apologetic. So a lot of what I work with in the school is around discernment, boundaries, self-authority, really a kind of power that is not apologetic. And the only way that I think many of us can find that is to be impeccable, because we're not looking for power over, we're not looking for portraits of power, we're not trying to be sassy, we're not trying to make everybody think we're amazing and we're empowered women, whatever that is. You know, we're not aiming for portraits of things. There are a lot of portraits out there. We're aiming for impeccability and truth. So to be unapologetic truly is to be in our own impeccability, because then there is no apology to be made. Being impeccable with ourselves, with what we're created to be, what's true, with our own nature is what allows us to be unapologetic, right? Not apologizing in any way, because when we're in a place where we haven't yet committed to the discipline of impeccability, you know, we haven't yet brought ourselves to meet our own places of lack of integrity, of self-abandonment, of entitlement, of all the things that we actually also hold. When we haven't brought ourselves to face those and started working with our own impeccability, then there is a certain way in which we can't be authentically unapologetic, because some part of us is sorry. You know, isn't actually probably that confident with what we're doing and not entirely behind what we're up to, right? So coming into an unapologetic presence is about coming into an impeccable presence, and one that is in reality impeccable. Not the words, not even necessarily always the actions, the presence. You know, coming into deep feminine reality inside of herself, what woman is created to be, that's about coming into a presence. And then the world has to reckon with that presence, right? And so to be impeccable in that allows us to show up in a very unapologetic way, because there's nowhere to go. We're here. We're at the center of things. We're here with our own impeccability. We have done, or we are reckoning, and we're not sorry about anything. You know, there's no real apology in there. This is what is. So impeccable, not apologetic. And the final thing I wrote was shameless in the best of ways. That phrase has come around for me a whole bunch lately. I've been creating the Queen's Command, which is the second level of her mystery school. And it's this shameless in the best of ways. I don't know if there's anything to say about that other than just a woman fully incarnate is shameless in the best of ways. She is what she is. And so those are some of the core principles for me of what deep feminine current is, what it is to, you know, it's so tricky to talk about having a women's mystery school, you know, partly because you can never capture woman. The reality of woman is the reality of life. It doesn't get captured and it doesn't get named. She will resist that, as she should, right? We will resist that as we should, being named, being put in a box. But there is, you know, why I created this school, why I lean so deeply into it and commit so deeply to it, both as a teacher and as a student of all of these practices, 9 months of them, 9 months of sensibilities, is because there is an intact, deep feminine current, a deep feminine wisdom stream that has been interrupted for many of us, both over the long term, culturally, in our personal lives, but it remains intact. For me, that's been the discovery of this lifetime, or the remembrance of this lifetime. And what I keep coming back to again and again, that this current is my lineage. It has me. It is my place of refuge. It is my place of renewal. It carries through, it walks with me through everything that I'm facing in life. And the school is like that. That's the way I hold the school. We go through it's 9 months. We can't go through every single thing, but we go through 9 months, each month, a whole new realm of the deep feminine, paradise, or the descent, heavenly mother, dark mother, communion with other, homecoming, sovereignty unto ourselves. So as I'm beginning her mystery school in about, a week, again, I invite you, if you're called, to join. If you don't join us for the 9 months, walk together in that way, I invite you still to take this moment with us. There is a collective energy building. There is a moment here for you to consider and to step past a threshold into a claiming of the reality of what if being a woman is your spiritual path, and inside of uncovering all of that is to be incarnate as a woman, to tend to your sensitivities, to pull away all the veils and conditionings, to become untamed, to soften, to listen, to come into all of this. What if that is your spiritual path, is a spiritual path? And what if it not only parallels, but actually informs the other paths that you will choose? A woman incarnate is the core spiritual path that nourishes the path of motherhood, right? It nourishes, women in the school have been Christian, Muslim, Buddhist, pagan. They've had all kinds of devotions to different spiritual paths, different spiritual traditions. And what they find in the school is that they're filling in the gaps, right? There is a big gap in a lot of everything that is where the deep feminine wisdom stream wants to run, right? It's where woman remembers herself, reweaves herself into a lot of things that were created, most likely with the omission of woman. Cultures, religions, paradigms, right? So if woman is your spiritual path, you're always on it. And the calling then is to turn with devotion and dedication and deep honesty to womanhood as it wants to reveal itself through you. I've had this year, for the first time, a couple amazing things have happened. One is we have a couple of men coming into the school, and they'll be in their own separate track, but it's amazing to me to start to be able to feel into how the deep feminine current speaks and moves through men more deeply. I've had women come forward. It feels like actually a little breach of a confidentiality, but there have been some very dark underbellies of the world and of wounding in women that I've wanted to touch and wanted to support. And women are coming to the school in recovery and in, making medicine from some really brave places. I mean, they always have, but it's deepened this year. And then, I've expanded, our age range now is from about the early 20s to 85. And this reality that for me is precious beyond speaking, really, but that there's a common fire we are all circling around as women, and that we could recover lineage, recover a certain amount of belonging, a true belonging, actually, in this deep feminine wisdom stream that is intact, although possibly interrupted. It's a deep mercy, right? It's amazing. So, learning to surrender, not submit, finding impeccability so you stop having any apology in your being, finding influence rather than control, moving from magnetism, starting to really saturate and utilize the magnetic, receptive capacity of woman in our subtle bodies, in our physical bodies. All these things are the invitations, some of the invitations on the path of woman as a soul, as a spiritual path. So, as I begin this next cycle of this school, I will be continuing to create videos and stay connected, probably a little bit less. And I'm really grateful that you share this time with me. And I feel you out there. And I feel all the emergence that's happening right now. And I send all of my love and I send all of my support to what is emerging in you. And I honor that. Just barely feel like I can feel it. Right? This golden nectar welling up in all of us at all times, but also very new. Anyway, what if woman is your spiritual path? What if it's that simple, just being a woman? That simple and that endlessly complex. How beautiful. How amazing. How honoring to understand your path as a woman as a path of initiatory power, of power, of truth, of magnitude. That is the equivalent of all the other things we've held as holy. Blessed be.